One of the ways I believe in which we do bring glory and honour to God is when we stand firm under trials. And it's also when we go in his strength. And it's a Mission Sunday today. On the third Sunday, we focus on one of our mission partners. And today it's great to be able to have our mission partners here live in person. I've not yet seen them, but I trust that they are here in the building. And they're going to come up. Here they are behind the pillar. And they're going to come up and tell us stories of how God's been using them in Argentina and what's next for them. David and Shelly, thank you so much indeed.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, we're here to say thank you. Throughout the last 10 years that we've been living and working in Argentina, you have supported us financially and in prayer. All of you collectively as a church, and many of you individually as well. That has been crucial. There were many battles. We didn't fight them alone. By praying for us and supporting us, our team of supporters enabled us throughout that time. So thank you very much for all you have done.
Location, I'm sure you know exactly where Argentina is, but it's an enormous country at the bottom there, and it varies from glaciers to the tropics, so it's extraordinary variety. Population, vast majority people of European descent, and there's a tiny minority of original indigenous groups of people. Now, Anglican missionaries arrived in 1911, and they were called to a sugar plantation. They were English owners, and they had loads of indigenous people coming to work as seasonal labour. Pretty rough conditions, actually, as well. They followed them back, started a mission station, and 11 years later, this happened. I don't know how you react to that, but it's English bishop, missionaries, and those being baptized with European clothes. So we got a few questions, but the gospel did arrive. And gradually, from that first mission station, the gospel spread all across that whole area, right in the very far north of Argentina. This was the cross where that first baptism took place, centenary celebration though. So there were some people who still pretty much remember the coming of the gospel to their communities. And it was really important just to hear the impact the gospel had had on their cultures. Now, don't worry about this too much, but every red place name is a different community with a small Anglican church. There were loads of other churches there as well when we left, and you can just see how that good news spread out across that whole area. About 160 congregations, mainly Wichi, that was the majority, Toba, Chorote, so various different groups. The diocese, though, is a bit odd because it's 95% indigenous people and 5% European Argentine. Exact reverse of the country as a whole, which is quite a challenge. My role was basically helping training new leaders and encouraging the present generation of leaders as well, lots of traveling. But of course, this last year, as you can imagine, everything went pear-shaped. No training courses, no visits, no services. Well, there were little services allowed among family groups, but everything snarled to a halt. And what was more complicated still is that the Lord called one by one, a whole series of key older leaders. Not just this man, Isidro, who was the main Weechi translator. He remembered the coming of the gospel. He could tell lots of stories. But also younger men like Melesio, who people thought were going to be the future leadership direction for the church. And I think it was about September, October, I got to the stage where I thought, what's going on? Everything's snarled up. The Lord's calling the key older leaders, but some of the younger leaders as well, not because of COVID, it was all for other reasons. And we were supposed to be handing over, it just wasn't possible. So my question mark was, what was going on? What on earth was the Lord doing? And I think this is a passage really helped me make sense of what the Lord was allowing to happen, or the Lord was engineering, really, because it's always him. I tell you the truth, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. If it dies, it produces many seeds. Well, that's Jesus' words. Actually, in the Greek, it says, unless the grain of wheat, that's him, isn't it? Primarily, it's him dying and rising again, lots of fruit. But it's the same process, isn't it? I think that sometimes the Lord wants to happen. And in the diocese, well, it was a whole series of things. Older generation being called away, old ways of doing church no longer possible, needing change. Missionary alongside, that time was coming to an end. Our plans, a whole series of things just needed to die so that something new could emerge. Do think of this poor chap on the far right, Nick. He's been marooned in England for 16 months because of COVID. He can't get back. He's got 2 years. He's a diocesan bishop. He can't get back. There is no way of getting back still. He's got 2 years to go, and it's the same process. He sort of dying to all his plans. And then the new leaders, Bishop Matteo, who's Toba, that was the warlike group, and then the slightly more portly one, Crisanto, assistant bishop, who Nick hoped to be alongside to help train. Now, it's being done at a distance. And it's the real challenge for them. Matteo, as a Toba, surrounded by Weechi, he's having to learn how to be bishop on his terms, on the Lord's terms, not as Nick as bishop, but it's going to be a different style. And this is, you can't see him, but this Bishop Crisanto, sitting as he likes to be among his people to bring consensus, and then when there's agreement, to move things forward. But it's not just that older generation, it's a younger generation who are more comfortable both in their culture, but also European Argentine culture. They can sort of translate for their people. This is Oliva, trained as through the Ministry of Education, but key person for gathering and helping people see the way forward. Mirna on the right there, a lovely single lady, that's pretty unusual, and key for encouraging the women, but also key for being a translator between her culture and what's coming.
Appearances are deceptive. That's one of many good points that Phil made. Goliath looked big and strong. David looked small and vulnerable. But the result of that contest surprised the onlookers on both sides, to the horror of the Philistines and the joy of the Israelites. Similarly, the Wichi do not look very impressive. They are poorer and less educated than most of us, but spiritually, they are rich, and they had not only much to learn from us, but much to teach us. For one thing, the Wichi have a very different view of what time is for. Here, many of us love the fast lane. It is often both more exciting and more productive. The Wichi generally stay in the slow lane, and they have time for relationships. Time to help a stranger whose truck is stuck in the mud. Time to sit and talk. And in the end, much of what we produce doesn't last, but relationships are eternal. Here also, we love to plan ahead, and we get very stressed when the future is uncertain, so we can't. The Wichi tend to live in the present and improvise. It's good to plan ahead sometimes, but that capacity to live in the present and improvise is far better than worrying about a future you can't control. Generally, people here have been terribly stressed by the uncertainties of the pandemic. The Wichi have taken it in their stride. They do not come across as stressed because of all of this. A good example to us, and part of this is their faith in God, trusting Him with the future. A good example to us. The Wichi also have a very different attitude to possessions. We see property as personal. They see it as communal. To us, things are important. They hold things lightly. We value generosity. The Wichi take generosity for granted. In their culture, when they were hunter-gatherers, if someone went fishing and caught lots of fish, what he didn't need, he would share with everyone around. And as there was no refrigeration, it would have gone to waste otherwise. That worked very well. Nowadays, when people have smartphones and motorcycles, it's a problem. It's a challenge. Hard to keep and maintain these things. For example, the bishops were given, the two indigenous bishops, Matteo and Crisanto, you saw earlier, were provided with motorcycles so they could visit the communities around them. But if a son or a grandson or someone else needs to borrow it, they can't say no. This is a real problem when they need the motorcycle and it's in need of quite extensive and expensive repairs. So the present world is offering challenges to the Wichi. They need to change and to adapt. But God forbid that they should become like us. There is something very valuable in their sharing and their attitude. So they need to find their own answers that will work for them. We have much to learn from them. And as you go on and support people in need, locally and globally, I hope and pray that you will also learn from them. Thank you.
This is it was one of the training sessions, but basically they're sending you their greetings. That's how they do it. That's key. Sending greetings is always important. And do pray for them in this process of letting go of the old and accepting whatever is growing, the new shoots that God is growing. One story that came up that I think is going to help them, when David is offered all Saul's armor and he decides this is not going to work. And I think the Wichi feel a little bit about the way of being church they've inherited. What's too heavy, what needs jettisoning, so the thing is a little bit more agile. And may the Lord help you in this process of dying to the old and seeing what comes next. Thank you.